So Australia's walked out of a pandemic that most people have now had to at least, I guess, understand, if not deal with. And so it's caused people to have to question, think about big questions like the fear of death and what is death and what's coming and those sort of things. So they sound like morbid things, but they've actually been a sort of a changing reality for the Australia and a unique opportunity to address big picture questions. It seems that a lot of our culture is based around trying not to think about big questions and paying a lot of money to be distracted from the things that really matter. And Australia is a nation that's really blessed. We have natural resources. We have, it seems, everything at our disposal to be very capable. And yet we have one of the highest suicide rates in the world. And so thinking about this collage, it's a really interesting time for the church to be emerging as a voice and a social presence.
Trina, for you, obviously you've been living through what Ben's talking about, but from your vantage point, your daily life, the things you experience and encounter as a woman in Australia, as a church leader, but in that area of what's going on, what are you seeing in terms of this question of the spiritual temperature?
I think probably having kids in school and things like that, just, you know, the mindset changes that, you know, we didn't experience growing up. Now, this is just the way it is, Mum. And I think also the young are looking for a reason to grab onto life. Like, what is the meaning of life? What is life all about? And I think, and it's so necessary with the wider, you know, everything's accessible now for them. And it can be overwhelming for them. As a mum trying to deal with questions that, you know, young kids and teenagers would have never have been thinking about, but now everything in the world or every suggestion in the world is at their fingertips.
Do you feel like it is creating unique opportunities? Obviously, there's sort of chaos in it.
I think it's given more reason to talk about things, or more, yeah. I suppose when something comes towards you that you maybe don't agree with, then you have the opportunity to bring a response. And how are we going to bring that response? So before we probably haven't had to as much, but now really considering, okay, how do I bring that response in love, wanting to fill that person with life and bring them towards Jesus and not push them away.
In the church, which I guess ministers to the city, we're just really feeling a little daunted by the wave of the social requirement that's going to be there for churches to sort of, it's sort of like, you know, put up and shut up, be quiet and don't say anything, but provide all the social needs for all the social needs that are there. So I guess as a church, we're trying to make sure that our community is ready with those responses and being first responders to those in the last resort. And it's becoming a really interesting dynamic to work in, and that we need to be incredibly understanding that dignity, bringing dignity to people is very important, but also that there's a diversity of people coming into the church. We've seen people walking in our doors who've got no background of God or any relationship to churches and are coming in for the first time, seeing international people who've come in from different nations and converting from different religions. And I don't know if we were seeing that as much pre-pandemic. Now we're seeing that. And I think all of this culminates in those moments. And baptizing them and bringing them through in faith is a glorious moment. But you know that there's a significant, you know, moment of decision when that has come about. So that's the encouragement for the church and the encouragement to keep moving. But also our role is to, I guess, stir the church towards having those responses, both with our mouths and with also the things that we do and how we respond in action.
What are some of the evidences of God's grace and provision right now kind of in your church?
We've just managed to build, you know, renovate a building, nearly 2,000 square meters in a pandemic, where escalations of costs are up to 50 to 70%, where people have been generous, but God's been amazing in his provisions through ways that we couldn't have seen. And I guess that was a picture of confidence to the church in our community because it was saying to them, God is with you. But there was also a renovation project happening in us to be ready for the things that God's doing. He will cause breakthrough to happen. And so many of those things and messages have been synonymous with people getting breakthrough, in whether it's marriage restoration or, as we've talked about, restorations of older buildings and things like that. They've thought, hang on, maybe this is possible for me. And seeing marriage restorations, people come in and see those sort of restorative moments. People who've been waiting to be able to have children, suddenly seeing that. It's funny how God brings that in a wave, which complements some of the natural things that we're doing.
With all God has done, it seems like He is moving. But what are you trusting for? What do we continue to stand with you guys in prayer for? Specifically, if you can, things that you feel like, man, if the Lord were to do this, I feel like that would really break some things open.
I would love to see more leadership come through in our church, and solid leaders that have a confidence to continue to stand and continue to walk in what God's called them to, and to get the community in. Now we're open to have the right people in place and get the community coming into the building, and just to be able to witness and encourage our wider community.
Yeah, we really feel stirred that there's a expansive spread about to happen. I mean, thinking about that's a little daunting, but just it makes you really aware and urgent that we need to spread and bring through really well conditioned and charactered leaders who have got a healthy appetite for what God's going to do, and really just seeing that the landscape is very open at the moment. As I think about the landscape in Australia, it's one of the prayer points is that as we start planting more churches there and establishing them, that they are of a new type, that they are of a type that are able to sustain what's coming, which, as you alluded to, we don't know. But they are ready and biblically based and spiritually filled and equipped to be a type of church that the world can look to, but the church can look to and say, there's an example of how we can live and walk. So in our nation and in our region, that'll be one of the really big prayer points, is that we pray for the who with us, the who are those who would go and plant those churches and who would be raised up in this time.